All right, I'm going to get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome. I'm Ebony. This is Homegirl Astrology. And today we're talking about the solar eclipse that's coming up on February 17th. And happy Valentine's Day for the lovers. Before we get into the chart, I want to give you a little bit of context because eclipses don't just happen randomly, they come in cycles. It's called the Saros cycle. And each eclipse in a particular cycle will occur roughly every 18 to 19 years. So when you're looking at an eclipse, one of the things that I like to do is look back at the last time that this particular series or cycle occurred because it gives us a sense of the themes, the flavor. So, what is this particular eclipse series going to bring? And the last time that we had an eclipse in this series was February 2008. So you could think back to your own life about what was happening during that time to see what areas might be resurfacing for you. Now, let me tell you what was happening in the world back then. So, Fidel Castro retired from the presidency of Cuba after 50 years. Fingers crossed for a repeat of that energy. Come on now. Barack Obama was taking the lead in the primaries over Hillary Clinton. So, we saw a new leader emerging. Also, there was a violent multi state tornado outbreak on February 5th and 6th of that year, killing 57 people. A suicide bombing in Pakistan killed 37 around that time as well. And if you remember or are traumatized enough, you'll remember the Great Recession was happening around that time. So in February 2008, Congress had just approved $168 billion in a stimulus package that was then sent to George W. Bush, who was the president at the time. So we are talking about political transitions, new leadership emerging, natural disasters, violence, and economic instability. Those are some of the signatures of this eclipse series. So now let's look at what the chart is saying for 2026. We've got a solar eclipse happening on February 17th, 2026 at 7:01 Eastern Time. And the chart that I will be sharing is set for Washington, D.C., since I'm reading this primarily from a US perspective because that's where I live and that's where most of my followers live. Everybody. But shout out to the people who are in India and other places, Europe, that follow me as well. All right, I'm going to share the chart. Maybe. Yep. All right, got that up. So at first glance, this chart looks crazy. You might be saying to yourself, what the hell? What the hell? We might say that it is over indexed for the Oriental or Eastern side of the chart. Now, I do have a lot of extra stuff in the chart, more so than I usually have on here, but I'm going to speak to everything that's actually on here. I took some other stuff off because I usually have even more things on my chart. I like a lot of junk in the trunk when it comes to my charts. I've shared that before. So the eclipse is landing here at 28 degrees. Actually, there we go. 28 degrees of Aquarius, right near what we call the anaretic degree, the crisis point of the sign. The anaretic degree is at 29 degrees of any sign. And we're not quite there yet because we're at 28 degrees and some change and not 29, but we can feel it coming. So we're still in the fight. We're not all the way, we're not escaping to the next sign yet, but we can feel that crisis point is almost there. And there's a Sabian symbol. And from that Sabian symbol for this particular degree of Aquarius is a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis. So that sounds really cute, right? Sounds really cute. Transformation, freedom, becoming who you're meant to be. But here's the thing. Nobody talks about when It's the thing nobody talks about when they romanticize the butterfly. The chrysalis part is violent. The caterpillar dissolves, it becomes goo. Everything it was breaks down completely before it can become what it's going to be. And while it's in there, it's dark, it's cramped, it's uncomfortable. You can't see what's happening from the outside. You just have to trust the process. And one of the things that I've been hearing a lot is about, oh, this is a 1 year that we're entering into. This is a fire horse year. And I'm like, yes, 1 year is a new cycle. But in order for you to get to that new cycle, you have to let things wrap up and end. And that's not always a pretty experience. All right, so that's where we are. And as I'm kind of saying this, talking about this butterfly situation, this chrysalis thing, I'm thinking of Emergent Strategy, the book by Adrienne Murray Brown. And full disclosure, I haven't read the book yet, even though it's been out since like 2017. But I'm gonna read it. But from what I understand, it offers a framework for social change inspired by science fiction, particularly the work of Octavia E. Butler, who we have talked about on this channel before. And the framework also is inspired by natural systems as well. So there are principles for navigating constant change by learning from patterns in nature. So it may be a good time to read it for the first time if you're like me, or revisit it, reference it, whip it out. Pause. Because whatever is encompassed in those pages should be a guide for this moment, right? As we're building and dreaming up this future simultaneously in real time. So, just going back to the chart, we have an Aquarius eclipse, as I said, and Saturn is the ruler of Aquarius. So that means that Saturn rules not only this ascendant, but also the eclipse itself, because the eclipse is going to be here where the sun and the moon are. This is a new moon eclipse. So when Saturn rules the eclipse, it's not really the fun option. I've talked a lot about Saturn on this channel because Saturn always doing something. But Saturn brings coldness, long illnesses, poverty, imprisonment, fear, tedious lawsuits, storm and damage at sea, loss and scarcity of crops, issues with old folk, the death rate, life threatening epidemics, public sorrow, and disappointment. Now, I don't know too many people who aren't disappointed in how things are going right now, except for maybe Pam Bondi. Pam, the Dow is at 50,000. Bondi, girl, this is not the time. But yeah, the traditional text can be pretty bleak about it, but Saturn is the planet of reality, of consequences, of you built this house on sand and now the tide is coming in. And because this eclipse is in an air sign, Aquarius, we also get signatures of disease, pestilence, aka plagues, and sedition. Now, sedition. If for people like me who are like, I have an idea of what sedition is, but I don't really remember the actual definition. So I got you. The definition of sedition is conduct or speech inciting people to rebel against the authority of a state or monarch. And that's funny because that's how the administration has been trying to hem up Mark Kelly with the video of him speaking to the military folk, when the real sedition hasn't really happened yet, but it's on the way. And it's going to be a time. Now, so that was Saturn broadly. But here's where things get personal. So Saturn, again, is ruling the ascendant of this chart. This is the first house. So that in a mundane chart, or a chart for a nation or a collective, in a mundane chart, the first house represents the nation and its people. So effectively, Saturn is serving as a proxy for the nation and its people in this chart. So Saturn is us, the American people, or specifically the people of the United States of America. So, and Saturn is sitting right next to Neptune. So this is Saturn over here, and then Neptune is right here. So we, the people, the country, the whole collective identity of this nation, we're being hit by Neptune. And Neptune is a solvent. So we are dissolving, we are in the goo. Neptune is the fog, the confusion, the dreams and delusions. It's also about fraud and deception and things not being quite what they seem. It's also connected to illness, especially the kind that's hard to diagnose, hard to pin down, hard to fight because you can't see it clearly, and particularly the spread of illness because Neptune has no boundaries. So that it's like the illness just seeps out and permeates. It's also related to toxins. But we've already got, multiple illness testimonials in this chart if you listen back to what I've already said. But yeah, Neptune is a bunch of flim flam at the end of the day. But because this is happening in the first house of the chart, which is the house of the national identity, it's actually a lot of planets here in the first house, as you can see. That means that it's not private. This is not happening behind closed doors. The US is being forced to confront who it is publicly and visibly. The whole world is watching us go through this. So think about immigration policy. That is Neptune and Saturn fighting over boundaries. Neptune wants to blur the lines, dissolve the walls. Saturn wants to build the walls, enforce limits. And both of those impulses are playing out in how this country is presenting itself right now. So the tension between the idealistic narratives about who we are as a nation and the harsh material realities of what's actually happening, that gap is getting harder to ignore. Some texts talk about this combination bringing losses through deception or fraud, sickness, treachery, disease, persistently bad conditions. Actually, let me take the, I'll leave this up for a second. But here's the other side of that. The rigid structures that felt permanent, they're losing their grip. The institutions that seemed immovable, not so immovable anymore. And maybe that's not all bad, right? Maybe some of these structures needed to dissolve. Maybe the old identity of this nation needed to break down so something new could emerge. Now, with Saturn conjunct Neptune, it's like we're building the plane as we're flying it. Discovery, design, development, and testing, and the push to production. Shout out to my tech people that are here. All of that stuff is happening all at once. What could go wrong, right? But that's where we are. So this is the beginning. This is a North Node eclipse. You can see the North Node here, and this is the eclipse over here. So together, that's the eclipse formation. When we have a North Node eclipse, that means we're entering a new chapter. The country is being pushed towards something new and unfamiliar and how it defines itself. We're opening a door, and we don't fully know what's on the other side yet. And that's what it feels like to be in the chrysalis. You can't see what you're becoming. You just know that what you were is gone. Now I am going to take the screen down for a moment just so I can talk to y'all directly. So Aquarian themes are all over this eclipse: technology, collective movements, networks, detachment from tradition, the question of who belongs, who gets to participate, and what the collective owes to the individual. All of that is up for redefinition. And this eclipse is going to feel like the not so calm before the storm. The real storm is probably going to come more so with the new moon in March. So, but this is the setup. The tension is building, the pressure in the chrysalis before the wings start to push through. The sun and moon are exactly on the ascendant in this chart. So I'll pop it back up again, just so you can see. The ascendant is here, again, at 28 degrees Aquarius, and the sun and the moon are also at 28 degrees Aquarius. So that's interesting, right? The moon represents the people. The sun represents leaders, national champions, public heroes, and they're both right here at the front of the chart, emerging together. So remember what was happening in 2008 with the same eclipse series that I mentioned before? Obama was emerging as a leader. So I'm looking at this chart and I'm like, who is the hero who is going to rise to the occasion this time? Who's going to meet the moment? This is a time when a leader is going to be born. The chart is also showing me that the path forward involves strategic alliances and a recalibration of values. Legal strategy is going to be central. Women in strategic and political roles being significant during this period as well. And I say that because of Pallas, Venus, and the node being here together. So watch who's making moves, watch who's playing the long game. Now it's going to get a little messy here. So we've got Uranus, which is the planet of sudden disruption and rebellion, and it is making a hard aspect to some important points in this chart. And to be clear, just for your awareness, I'm not going to go through every single planet in this chart. I'm not going to go through everything in the first house either. A lot of other astrologers are going to do that anyway. But Uranus, again, is the planet of sudden disruption, destabilization. It's like lightning striking. It's all about rebellion. And it's making aspects to a lot of the stuff up here. So the eclipse itself, part of fortune, also to Mars and Vesta. So as it's doing that, This is telling me that it isn't just about external enemies or foreign threats. There's an internal fracturing. People who are aligned realizing that they're not actually on the same page. Partnerships are breaking apart. The coalition is cracking. The urge for freedom, inner rebellion, sudden conflicts, separation of partners, these are all part of this story. And the call is coming from inside the house. This is a confrontation about who gets to carry the flame forward. And I say that because of the Mars Vesta combination with Uranus. Who gets to decide what America is devoted to? Now, Uranus is also activating the part of the chart that deals with communication, news, and neighboring countries. So that is the third house. So there may be some unexpected responses from Canada, Mexico, other nearby nations. And it's already kind of happening. Like within the last week or so, Canada and France opened new consulates in Greenland's capital amid Trump's pressure to take over Greenland. And if we look at the astrocartography map for this eclipse, which I'm actually not going to show, but we would see the sun and moon lines running directly overhead in Paris, France. So it seems that France, Paris, seems like they might take a leading role in all of this. I know they've not been feeling some of the things that 45 is doing, especially when he put President Macron's text messages on blast in the public, which is crazy. But there are some other indicators also showing that other countries are stepping up to us to say, is there a problem here? And I mostly say that because like the seventh house ruler is here in the first house. Now, quickly, let's look at where the leadership is showing up. So the 10th house is here in Sagittarius. The 10th house represents the nation's leaders, including the president. And the ruler of Sagittarius is Jupiter, which is down here in the fifth house, retrograde in the sign of Cancer. Now, Jupiter actually kind of likes being in Cancer because it's exalted there. But when a planet is in a sign that it likes, but it's retrograde, then it's said to be like a man who is sick at home. So the leaders can't fully utilize the power that they have. They're hamstrung. This is the same story we saw in the last new moon chart. Jupiter here in the eighth house, the derived eighth house, which I tried to show y'all last time, but my screen cut out. So hopefully that won't happen again. But this is the fifth house of the nation. But if we count it from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Ooh, I counted wrong. But this is the eighth house from, from the leadership. So what does that all mean anyway? So this shows that the leadership are in their eighth house, which is the part of the chart associated with their fears, their anxiety, and danger to life. So there are some credible death threats to the president and others in leadership, or some other health issues putting them in danger. And I'm actually really annoyed because I prepped my notes for this live days ago before I recorded. And this morning, as I'm live, I learned that Congressman Massey was posting on X saying stuff about, basically saying that if he turns up dead, that y'all need to investigate it because he didn't do it to himself. Right. So this forecast feels a little bit late from that perspective because eclipses actually go into effect about 2 weeks before the actual eclipse date. So I should have done this like a month ago. So that means I can't stroke my astro eggplant about this, but it's fine. It's not about me, but astrologers definitely, we have egos. But the eighth house anxiety, getting back to the chart, could also be related to the Epstein files, since so many of them are in there. Trump reportedly is in there like a million times. But also speaking of health issues, Mitch McConnell looks like he's knocking on death's door with his cold, withered hand. And he's got 3 planets around 4 to 5 degrees of the fixed signs. So I'm also kind of wondering what Pluto is going to do there because it's at 4 degrees of Aquarius, which is another fixed sign. So it's right in the ballpark. And I wish I had a birth time for him, especially since he's heading into a new solar return year. But I digress. And it's not on the screen. Actually, it is on the screen. But there is a Jupiter, Hades, Kronos combination that can translate to playing the fine gentleman while living in poverty, or a poverty-stricken government, or superiors who do not appear in the capacity as such. And I'm pulling that from the Rules for Planetary Pictures book. So this is people in power pretending everything is fine when it's actually not. More broadly, this combination is not just about poverty. The poverty stuff comes in from Hades, but it could also be rich and powerful leaders who are breaking down, deteriorating, falling apart, because those are other significations for Hades. Chronos also represents things that are high up. So figuratively, like leaders, and literally, like tall buildings or planes. So tall buildings could be deteriorating or falling down, or other things that are high in the sky may be struggling. So, what are the planetary combinations saying? Now, I'm going to take the screen down actually because it may be a little overwhelming to look at as I'm going through this. But when I look at the planetary combinations in this chart, the patterns that form when you put multiple factors together, I'm seeing a few things. And I'll just share the top 6 highlights. Shout out to the people who are here. Number one, constitutional crisis energy. So, this chart is describing a massive political upheaval centered on treaties, alliances, and legal rights, regime change vibes, rights being seized by a forceful, nonconformist movement. For example, a nation that's withdrawing from a longstanding alliance, or a populist uprising reshaping the political landscape. And as I'm talking about, just to be clear, as I'm talking about these planetary combinations, these are not necessarily specific to the United States because these are global things that are happening. So everyone's going to feel this. Number two, rapid force transformation. There is a combination in the sky right now that we haven't really seen since 1699. Since 1699, Pluto and Vulcanus are in opposition. And this is about quick, mighty change that is happening too fast, too furious, but also major abuses of power, huge amounts of wealth. And technically, we've seen this combination recently. It happened around the time of the No Kings protest last year. And I think it was exact on that day, but it's very close to exact if it wasn't. So you can expect similar energy, right? But pretty soon, Saturn is also going to be involved in that combination. So that is major abuses of power, meeting major resistance, great wealth concentrated while everything else decays. And Saturn is kind of, again, putting a brake on it, trying to slow it down, which could translate to violent suppression, efforts being blocked, tremendous energy confined and compressed. It's just below the boiling point. Things are kind of simmering. Now, three, public health and reproductive rights. So this chart is pointing to a highly public, fated moment involving women's issues, reproductive policy, or scientific breakthroughs that impact the general populace. There could be a major debate related to reproductive rights, could be a new technology being announced and immediately regulated. Number four, violence at sacred places. So, unfortunately, this chart does have indicators of political violence at churches, hospitals, places where people are trying to just get themselves together. And it frustrates me because I feel like healthcare workers, especially, already have to put up with so much. And then people come to the hospital and are like violent with them. Side note, do y'all watch The Pit on HBO Max? It's such a good show. So good. Chef's Kiss. And there's another medical show that I watch, St. Denis Medical. It's on Peacock. Very funny. And I laugh so hard at that show that I have to pause it so that I can continue laughing and then press play so I don't miss any jokes. It's just laugh out loud funny. Anyway, that was ad. Just kidding. Number five, sexual misconduct leading to loss of power. The chart is showing stories of sexual abuse or misconduct resulting in people losing their positions. Accountability is coming. Accountability is already here for some people because the lady from Goldman Sachs already lost her job due to her ties to the Epstein files, and we'll see more of that continuing. Also, last thing, the strategy is separation. That keeps coming up in multiple combinations, separation by force, change through force of circumstances, the theme of things being pulled apart in a forceful way. So, I mean, yes, you could speak to like ice already pulling people apart, separating them. But a lot of times, as I said in the last live, that separation can mean a lot of things in astrology. It can represent actually just, leaving a place, leaving a situation behind, or leaving the earth through passing away. And last thing, I do think all of this Aquarius and forced transformation stuff is interesting in the context of the kind of AI wars between OpenAI, Anthropic, and others. Massive amounts of money are being poured into these technologies and these companies, so much so that OpenAI and Anthropic are now number 2 and 3 on the list of the highest valued private companies in the US after SpaceX. And it's hard to expect that this current administration would actually do anything to restrict the growth of these companies. But we're starting to see that collective pushback against AI, specifically OpenAI, since one of the people at the top has been one of Trump's biggest donors. People are canceling their accounts. People are really into the economic boycott thing these days. And it's so interesting to be in this Pluto and Aquarius moment where people are just rabid for change. Pluto is fanaticism and Aquarius is innovation and social change. So it's very extreme. Things are happening quickly, as again, referring back to that Pluto Volcanus combination, which can mean hothouse development. And again, things happening too fast, too quickly. All right. So this eclipse marks the start of a new series along the Aquarius Leo axis. There are significant shifts in themes related to innovation, community, and personal freedom. And again, being in an air sign, this eclipse is going to foreshadow tempestuous winds, famine, disease, but also sedition. People are rebelling against authority. But for now, we are still the butterfly in the chrysalis, and it's uncomfortable up in here, but we are emerging. And I do want to pull a quick oracle card situation, see what we got here. What does the collective need to know about this upcoming eclipse that is in Tres Dias? All right, pull on behalf. This card says, all paths lead home. Inner authority, intuition, turn your gaze within. I'm going to show y'all the card. And I'll just read the textbook definition of this, what it says. Bear with me. All right. It's normal to look to the external world for answers and guidance. What's revolutionary, revolution, is turning your gaze inward. You're being called to source your guidance from within, to study the terrain of your inner landscape, to develop a reliable relationship with your soul. The more time you spend connecting with your soul, the deeper the connection will become. The challenge for empaths, people like me, is staying connected without cutting off from the world. The best way to do this is to develop a daily practice that helps you to keep checking in, to draw on the wisdom within and let that be the authority in your life. If this card appears, you may be called to develop or switch up your spiritual practice, to get in the habit of turning your gaze within, getting centered for the day before consuming anything from the outside world. Okay, before you start doom scrolling, to start from a feeling of at-homeness, and throughout each day to find simple ways to keep coming home. This doesn't mean switching off from the realities of today's world. I mean, how can you? We need as many conscious people as possible living with their eyes wide open. Rather, it's a call to start your day from a place of connectedness, grace, and devotion. So when you go out into the world and when you let the world in, you do it from an unshakable state of being, a state where you draw your strength, authority, and guidance from a place deep, deep within. And I love this because it actually brings us back to the last live that we did where I talked about Aquarius and I talked about the star card in the tarot, which is very much about going within. It's about meditating. It's about getting hooked up into the collective conscious through the fish hook, which is the Hebrew word that's associated with it, sadi. So yes, it's very much a very meditative card. It's a very meditative moment because we are in the chrysalis. So it's not necessarily the time to take full action, but it's the time to center yourself and prepare for when you bust out of there and those wings come out and you can fly, you know what you're going to do. All right. So if you want to know how this eclipse is hitting your chart specifically, I do consultations. So the link will be in the description box below. Come and talk to me. I really want to meet you. Can I talk to you? And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you even doing with your life? Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. I will see you next time. Peace, homie.